Well, good evening, everybody. It is 8:15. I finally got all my clocks going here in the house. I had to take them all down from the wall because virtually every single one of them had stopped, including the big one there in the kitchen and the one on the mantelpiece. And the contacts had got a little bit rusty, so what I did, I put a little bit of kitchen foil, you know, the tin foil, the aluminium foil, in between the battery and the little contact. So that appears to have solved the problem. So I'm just going to put this camera down on the table for a moment. Just get a little something to stand it on. Put my little dish down here. I pointed there in that direction. Now, you can hear the ticking of the clock. So, I've been a little bit quiet over the past few days. It's around the anniversary of my mother's passing. And I just needed to have that wee bit of quiet time, you know, just to be mindful of my own feelings, I suppose. And I've just been keeping really busy. So I've planted all my birch trees, the 10 birch trees, I've planted them. I was very happy about that today because, you know, sometimes when you're feeling a wee bit low, that can deplete your energy and make you feel as though you don't want to do anything at all. Well, you see, that's the worst road you can take. Because when you're feeling low and when you've got, you know, something which is sensitive in terms of, you know, what's going on in your life. You need to get active. You need to get and sort all those wee jobs that you put on the long finger. So I've been getting all my clothes washed, and I've been tidying up, and I've been sorting out bags for the charity shop, and I've been planting my trees and doing a bit of pruning and clearing up out the back and really just keeping massively busy. So that to me is the cure-all. It's the cure-all for sadness, depression, anxiety, which we all get. None of us are immune, you know. I know everyone thinks I'm incredibly strong, and I suppose I am in many ways, but I'm also a very sensitive person, and I think very deeply about everything, and sometimes I just do too much thinking and not enough doing. And you know, everything's about balance. So I have brought the balance back into focus and got my derriere up of the chair and got some action going in terms of all those little jobs that were waiting around for me. So it's been a beautiful day. I've been working outside. Oh, I must show you my new wellies because I was very excited about getting a new pair of wellies. Look, and I even washed them after I was out in the garden. These are nice because they've got a little lining in them, look, a little kind of a flock lining. So they're not cold, because sometimes, of course, wellies can be very cold. And today I felt very cold. So, of course, there was a reason for that. I was out initially in the garden in my dressing gown, okay, with a big coat on over the top. But I wasn't properly washed or dressed. And actually you need to do that in the morning if you want to keep nice and warm. And put on fresh clothes and fresh socks. So I've picked some of the beautiful little rose hips, you know, that were growing against the shed out there. Aren't they lovely? And this is a little bit of the foliage from the hypericum. And this is a little bit of the foliage from the box. I just thought that was really lovely. There we go. You know, you can make beautiful little displays from the simplest of things that grow outside. So, I want to read one very short chapter from my book, A Cottage in 3 Acres. And the reason why I want to read it is because it's a little bit about the reason why we have millions of acres of land that nothing appears to grow on, and I'm talking about trees. Our agricultural land has become very unbalanced. Too many animals, not enough trees. And here in Ireland we're suffering with an overplanting of what is Sitka spruce. It's called forestry. Well, it shouldn't be called forestry because it's actually monoculture. And monoculture and forest seem to be completely at odds with each other. But anyway, enough said on that. I'm going to read this little chapter, and I think it just explains what I think is wrong with this imbalance. Okay. Now, it's chapter 11 of the book A Cottage in 3 Acres. And the title of the chapter is Sustainable is No Longer Enough. To sustain is to keep alive, strengthen or support physically. We talk about sustainability a lot these days. Sustainability has become a word for all we need to live by and practice. However, we cannot simply sustain this life, for our earth needs help to heal, and healing means regenerating life, not just keeping the status quo going. We have become too comfortable with the word sustainable. Big business has taken the word and applied it on advertising to make us feel better about what they are doing. However, big business agriculture, which accounts for most of how our food is produced, does little or nothing to build healthy soil, and that is what regenerative agriculture is all about. In looking after and caring for our soils worldwide, we are on the right road towards dealing effectively with the carbon crisis that is linked with climate change. Plants absorb carbon. I realised after a very short time here at Bealtaine Cottage that what I was doing was not in any way sustainable, but regenerative agriculture, unheard of at the time. Planting is one thing, but attempting to regenerate 3 acres into a stable, productive landscape for all life is quite a mammoth task, for it is not simply planting, but planting to empower nature to take over. We have few places left in Ireland where we can go and see how it once was, before humankind extracted all that could be taken with ease. The forests that once covered Ireland were magnificent and the envy of the kings and queens of England. In many ways, Ireland was the Iraq of its day. The medieval economy was predicated on hardwood and sheep. I lived in the fens in England at one time and spent many happy hours exploring villages that boasted some of the most wonderful medieval churches I've had the pleasure to see and visit. All of these churches were built on the wealth from the wool trade of the time. Some of the churches even used tons of sheepskins as ballast on which to build, and the effect in some cases has been quite dramatic, resulting in the occasional church leaning over at an odd angle. In order to grow such wealth as a vibrant wool trade endows, it is necessary to cut down trees, or, to be more precise, decimate forests en masse. As a consequence, the timber needed by a thriving economy, much like the oil we consume today, had to be sourced elsewhere. Don't forget that the Tudor economy in particular relied on a growing navy with which to explore, extract and dominate, and all the ships were built using hardwood. One of the first books I ever purchased has proved to be a source of fascination and recurring interest to me for decades. It was published in 1971 and details the decline of the once great forests of Ireland in both the north and south of the country. The Irish Woods since Tudor Times, Distribution and Exploitation by Eileen McCracken. This work discusses the original distribution of forests in Ireland and in particular uses place names of today to locate them. The book examines the large-scale deforestation from the establishment of English control, as well as some aspects of timber trade and industry in the 17th and 18th centuries. Much of the landscape we are familiar with today would be unimaginable to our distant ancestors. Most of the land is bereft of trees and forests. Rivers have been straightened, road networks cut through hillsides, and the constant march of man in his quest to conquer has savaged Mother Earth. Some landscapes appear to us as wholly natural, yet are far from being so. Moorland, for example, is land that is devoid of trees, where regeneration cannot happen due to a total absence of trees. Moorland is in the main the product of mass extraction of trees and forests. This is beneficial to agriculture, for if one looks at the stats on sheep farming, for example, one sees that there was an estimated 116,000 sheep grazing the Peak District moors in England in 1994. It is my observation here in the west of Ireland that land devoid of trees quickly becomes moorland in terms of its inability to regenerate. About 22% of the North Yorkshire moors is under woodland cover, mostly located to the southwest and southeast, equivalent to more than 300 square kilometres of trees. It is home to the largest concentration of ancient and veteran trees in northern England. It is difficult to conceive, when looking at moorland, that this was once all forested land. And so today, a day or two later than I had hoped, but regarding the day that was in it, the anniversary of my mother leaving this beautiful, beautiful world in mortal form, it was time to go out and plant those beautiful birch trees. And before the week is out, I will have some more bare-rooted trees to plant. And I'm just going to fill the gaps and keep filling the gaps. Because I now realise that what I dreamt of when I first thought about returning to Ireland and buying this old place that nobody wanted, what I seen from the lane when I looked up at Bealtaine Cottage, so sad. It was so sad and so lonely, and there was slates missing from the roof, and there wasn't a laneway to speak of. It was a dirt track, which is incredibly muddy and wet. And the land was just covered with rushes and squelched, and it was such a sad place. But what I seen that day was a cottage in the woods. And this is what it has evolved into. It's evolved into a cottage in the woods. My mother would have absolutely loved to have wandered down among those trees. She often wandered down amongst the little, tiny little saplings. I mean, some of them were only up to her ankle. Some of those trees were so tiny. So, Jack's just sat here listening to me. And I think there's 2 pussycats somewhere in this house. Just have a little look for them. Have a little look. Shall have a little look. Why, look at this. Tweedledum and Tweedledee. The baby's on the bed. Well, I'm sorry for disturbing you, Sammy Birkin and Beauty. Funny. There we go. Yes, Jack, you and I are going to light the stove. Well, I'm going to light the stove and you're going to enjoy sitting in front of it. And I'm going to go onto YouTube and see if there's an interesting little film or even an interesting little documentary that I can sit and watch. Yes, and you have your little mat there. That's Jack's mat. Yeah. So, thank you for visiting Bealtaine Cottage. It's been lovely talking with you. Blessings to you all.